Our second February meeting. I think what I'd ask is if we can just, I'll send something out to the board, if we can just consolidate all our questions by the next meeting. And that'll give King 2 weeks to then kind of prepare for those. Is that good timing?
That's right.
All right. So we'll do that by, I don't know what that date is, February 7th or 11th?
February 11th.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. So by February 11th, and then we'll get it over to King. And now, yep, Mr. Cobupo will have a presentation on 3-year projections and long-range planning.
Projected revenue first.
All right.
Do you always have this effect on the crowd?
I do. Thank you. All right, so projected revenue, 2019-20 budget. So what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to assume that everybody up here for the board, this is your meeting, or people in the audience, or people watching this, just assumed they knew what foundation aid entails. And it is pretty convoluted. It's not a quick little answer on what foundation aid is, but I have something that will kind of give you a better idea of what that is. So, on January 15, Governor Cuomo presented his proposal for the 2019-20 state budget. Governor is proposing a total of $27.7 billion in state support for public schools. This represents a year-to-year increase of $956 million, which is a 3.58% increase, as compared to the approved 2018-19 budget. The total increase represents a $749 million increase in formula aids. So when people look at this, first thing they say is, wow, this is great. Look at the money that they're getting. When really, the way you have to look at this is, they're moving money from somewhere to get it. The fact that there's going to be new money really isn't the case, but the big part's going to come down to the foundation aid. So as we look at the bottom, the big number is the $956 million. Okay, so as we just said, I want to take a second just to explain foundation aid. So, well, the public is basically, in 1993, an advocacy group, the Campaign of Fiscal Equity, the CFE, sued the state of New York for contending that the New York City public schools did not provide students with a sound basic education, as the courts have specified is required by the state constitution. Because they did not receive sufficient funding, in 2003, the courts of appeals ruled that the CFE, in the CFE's favor. State leaders subsequently adopted the State Education Budget and Reform Act of 2007 to increase school aid over 4 years by $7 billion annually, including $3.2 billion for New York City. Here's the big part. So as part of this legislation, 30 aid programs were consolidated into foundation aid, with the goal of better targeting the money to school districts lacking sufficient financial resources. And that the year it was instituted, the school year was 2007 and 8. But as you remember, 2008 there was the recession, the Great Recession of 2008. So really, it was the school year 2016-17. The school aid totals were $24.3 billion, of which foundation aid was $16.5 billion. So that's where the whole foundation aid really kind of comes into play. It goes back as early as a court case in 1993. But again, what I sent the board earlier today, you can click on the different school districts in New York State and it shows you. So it is kind of common sense. We get, you're going to see in here, the bulk of our money comes from state aid. We were at a, I want to say, 4 designation when it comes to the socioeconomic status. If you look at like a Skaneateles, it was a 10. Like Fable Manley is high as well. So they're going to get, we'll take Skaneateles, perfect example. The bulk of the money they get is from property tax, and it's not from state aid. the foundation aid, where we're flip-flop on that. So it is really important that we do, receive foundation aid, because it is imperative for districts like ours.
Hey, Tom,
Yeah.
just 2 notes on that for everyone here in the board is, number one, that, can you go back to that previous slide? The 956 million or whatever it is?
Yeah.
That's less than half of what the Board of Regents said that our public education system needed just to maintain or provide adequate education for students. And to me, the most interesting part about that is that it's not like us who are elected. Board of Regents is, for the most part, I mean, it's an insider thing. You're picked through a process by the people that we've elected. So they put these people in place and then ignore what they say and provide us this. That's number one. And number two is it doesn't, the 956 million does not even keep pace with rate of inflation. So however they spin it, it's going to end up being a net decline for us.
Right, correct. And the 2 big numbers that we need to look at are the first 2, the foundation aid and the expense-based aids. The expense-based aids, that's great if we get our capital project, our phase 1 and phase 2, that are done in a timely manner. Then we'll actually see that. Because if we don't, then that's just a 411 million on paper. It looks really good. So it is very deceiving. That's why if someone just were to look at this at face value, they'd say, wow, that's awesome. You got to get it. The devil's in the details. So as we look right here, some of the big things that I want you to take from this is, again, it's published. That was the first state run that we had not that long ago. When they pull the 2019-20 amounts, they pull a current 2018 amount based on what is currently in each of the categories. And that's basically, so if you take a look at 2019-20, at next year's proposed budget, we're trying to compare basically apples to apples here. So the delta between the 2 is the differing actual amount that is currently in our 2018-19 budget. Okay, so we have some definite things we want to focus on this slide right here. So first and foremost, we want to take, this is compared to the actual adopted budget, which is more, as I said, apples to apples. Notice the column 2019-20. This is the same as the executive run from the last slide. But, as I said, this is compared to the actual adopted budget from last year. Our big increase, so you want to look over at the 1,287,501. So our big increase in building aid is because of our new capital project, and it's estimated that it will be coming it'll be coming on next year. We need, another note, we need to complete the project phase 1 to actually be able to see that aid. And that's what I talked about a little while ago when it showed the 411 million. We're really only going to see that if we actually complete it. So it is very important, as you heard from the last presentation, that we move along in a timely manner. So when it comes down to that third party, we're absolutely going to do that, because we can't afford to wait 9 or 10 months to get in the queue. Something else I want you to take a look at, the only amount that is a true number instead of an estimate is the foundation aid. And I kind of talked a little bit about our foundation aid. But if you take out building aid, it is, as you see in the bottom, it is a 3.68%. So it's not the 6.54 that looks right there. You can't see it because it's kind of dark. But literally, when you take out building aid that we're banking on, it is 3.68. If you look at the expenses where it says total expense-based aids, similar to what I said last year at this time, software, library, textbook, hardware, technology, universal pre-K, these are always going to be decreasing because we have a declining enrollment. So all of the schools in our county, for where it says total expense-based aids, those are all declining. Okay, so for right here, I want to refer to I've got a document that kind of goes into a little bit greater detail, but the governor's initiatives, there have been a lot of initiatives that he's put out, but the school aid growth cap, the APPR, what I will say right now is that will not be connected to student scores. So that actually is a positive. School bus cameras and fines for passing buses. State deadline for school level reporting. School district designated to submit equity plans. So right now in Oswego County, it's us and Fulton that are doing this right now. We don't really know how that's going to play out because we don't have anything to compare it to. But so right now, we're going to be able to have a breakdown by building of the equity of the money that's going into it. And I said last year when we knew we were going to put on that list, Hastings will obviously be skewed because of the foundations program that is there. So obviously we know right now with such a huge costly special ed program that's definitely going to show higher. Simplifying expense-based aids and the basic star exemption eligibility has changed. So now I do have a document. What I will do is I will forward this to the board, and it kind of gives a breakdown for each of those in greater detail. So I'll just send that to you. Unless any one of you wants to point to something up there, I can go to greater detail right now, or I can just send it to you. Send it to you? Okay. So again, I couldn't agree more. So this is Tim Creamer. This is the executive director for school boards in New York State. And again, I don't want to sit and read off of this, but I couldn't agree more with the things that with what he's saying, and also to piggyback what Andy just said just a little while ago, that if you get past some of the things that are a little bit deceiving and you really look at it, we to be able to run our districts efficiently and safely, we need to be able to lobby, but we need to look at what this gentleman is saying right here. So what can we do? We have the legislative forum. We who should attend? You know, what's the format? And how should we prepare? I think that something that this district has always done pretty well is working with CSDA when it comes to what do we both look, so how are we all on the same page in our lobbying process? So when you got the school boards lobbying, you got the districts, you've got the teachers, it's really important that we look at a very similar message. So Saturday, February 2nd at City BOCES, I will be there, 9 a.m. To 11 p.m.
Yeah, and an email came out today. I'm not sure, do you happen to recall what the deadline is? I know they were saying they were still accepting reservations for this, but I don't know if anyone else is able to attend. I know Tom and I are attending, but I'm not sure. It's always a crapshoot what representatives show up. So, because last year, who was it that backed out last second? And
I think they all did, didn't they? I don't think that there was.
No.
that may have been a leading
Well,
question.
Barkley was there.
Oh yeah, Barkley was there.
Yeah.
Patty Ritchie did.
Was not.
Yeah,
Patty Ritchie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Scary thing this year is all branches have transitioned to his power like him. That's what's really scary. So I don't know how much success we're going to have. I will certainly can try, but this budget is a scam. It's a scam. And there's no other way to put it. And until this, I've said it every year and I'll continue to say it. And I know he might be watching me, but I really don't care. Until this state wakes up, it's decimating the hell out of this state. And people are not moving out because of the weather. People are moving out because of high taxes and pathetic leadership down in Albany. Period. End of statement.
Continue to vote for these idiots.
Couldn't agree more.
Can we go to the next presentation? About those Patriots, no?
I bet you're rethinking putting his picture in the invitation.
Great job, Pearl, if you're watching from home.
Hey, Tim. The only thing I can say, Tim, is I'm just hearing confirmation that if you want it screwed up, give it to the government to do.
All right, so we have the 3-year projections. And again, this is a requirement by law that to present forecasting budget planning. So tonight we are going to do exactly what we've done in the last couple of years that I've been superintendent, and that is the going out a 3-year budget. I don't really feel that it's really responsible to go beyond 3 years because things change so much that if you go out 4 or 5 years, I don't want people to say, wow, that's not how you said it 3 or 4 years ago, because things change so much in that whole unknown. But we feel that within 3-year periods, increments, it's a lot more accurate. So here are the 2017-18 actual revenues and expenditures. So again, for the visual learners that we have, it's basically the same information that was on the last slide. We are one of those districts where this state aid makes up the bulk of our revenues. I just talked about that a little while ago. This is one of the reasons why we were selected to be part of that transparency reporting in year 1. It was us and Fulton. It's because we get so much from state aid, but also because we have 4 or more school buildings is why we were selected. I should have mentioned that before. If you were wondering why was it us and Fulton, that was really the 2 main criteria points, is that we do get a substantial amount of money in state aid, and the other part is we have 4 or more school buildings, where other schools in our county do not. Well, I mean, they get aid, but they don't have the buildings. So, if you take a look right here, we see the salary and benefits will always make up the bulk of our expenditures. That is never going to change. That will always be the case. So this is the same revenue and expenditure information from the last slide, but this represents the current 2018-19 budget. So as you see, there's basically no change in the revenues or in the expenditures. Here is the summary of the last few slides. It's the actual against the 2017-18 actual budget. So we're going actual to actual so you can get apples to apples. This is how the comptroller suggests that we do our projections. TRS is projected to go down because the market is performing well, so that's a positive right there. So again, TRS is the teacher retirement system, where the bulk, I would say 3/4 of our, 750 employees? The bulk of our employees are in our TRS. Estimates, of course, so as I had said, the bulk of the payroll is in the TRS system. ERS, basically everybody else that aren't in TRS, and that projection is where the rest of our staff is, and we have not been given these estimates yet. So as you know, we went into the Central New York Healthcare Consortium. We knew that it was going to happen, but there was going to be a 7% increase. It's one of those things, you got to kind of weigh both sides. If we were fully funded, or self-funded, and we had some major cases in the district, it could substantially, you're taking a gamble. It had worked for us, there's no doubt about it. But one of the reasons why we went into the healthcare consortium was that we would be able to do better at long-term planning. Again, with that, saying that when we went from the retrospective plan to the minimum premium, it definitely was in our favor, and that's how we were able to definitely see some savings. Okay, so here are the constants, or if you want to refer to that as the assumptions that we are using. As you see, state aid. It's very important that you direct your attention to year 1, where it says 2% plus the $1.2 million in building aid. So where we saw before, we had substantially more money in our district because of our capital projects and our building aid. So year 1 was a $1.2 million building aid. Year 2, it was the 2% plus the 1.7 million in building aid, and then by year 3, it was just the 2% because it was assumed that we weren't going to be we would be done with our capital projects. Very similar to what you heard Kirk say. So with this slide right here, some of the key things I want you to look at. So the 5.61% and then the 6% are way more than we would normally experience. And that is a result of the capital project and our corresponding debt that will pay for that capital project. So, sorry, saying that, I didn't slide that over. So, see the 5 point, at the bottom of the 2019-20, bring it all the way down, percent of change, the 5.61, and the 6%. That's why those numbers were higher. And again, it's all related to the capital project and the corresponding debt. So this is the first projection. If it's a 2%, that would not be good for the district. So every year I show you the different percentages. This would not be good. If you look at the bottom and you see that the 2020-2021 would be in the whole $3,101,107. Would not be where we just can't do it. So the state aid at 3%, and as you know right now, the first runs came out at about 3.8%. So if this was going to be at 3%, it's basically taking a look. It's hurting us, not as much as the 2%, but it's still not where we want to be. And then here you see the state aid at 4%. So a lot depends on the project phase 1 and phase 2 being completed on time, so we can generate the estimated building aid of the 2.5 million. So that's kind of the common theme that started on the first slide when it showed the 411 million, because a lot of that comes back to only really seeing that money and having that actually be actual if we get the work done.
What's the delta on 4% there, Tom? What's the bottom line?
I'll go back, sorry.
I see that. On the first year, what's the delta?
So in the first year, are you talking about for 1920, it was 662,974. For 2020-2021 was 1,224,437. So it was substantially different, improved from the 2% to the 3%. Okay, now we slide into, we've been using Forecast 5, so I was going to have Maureen come up if you wanted to show the slides for this part here so you hear a different voice.
So while she's coming up, I'll give, well, whoever, but I'm guessing probably Maureen props. No, if you compare projections in this year compared to projections that were presented to us last year, I mean, there's slight variations from one year to the other, but there, I mean, it seems to be a really good pattern, so kudos to you. And I know it's nothing more than a shot in the dark, but pretty consistent, pretty good.
No, I mean, this was all me. She didn't. No. In fairness to Maureen, she could definitely teach a college course on this right here. There's no doubt. She gets calls from other business managers all the time.
Yeah, to your point, Andy, 4% is doable for us over the next couple of years. When you're looking at those deltas of 600,000, $1.2 million, that's a 1%. We can work with a 1% shift. It's when you're getting into those 2 and 3 millions, when you're projecting out, or you're getting 2% aid. That's a lot more work for us. That's cutting versus working on keeping the programming that we have. I know we like Forecast 5, so I pulled some of the pieces that come out of that system because that's what you guys have been looking at the last year. We already have the Forecast 5, so we have a lot of budget information that we can get out of there. It's very similar to the budget information that you see because all of our pieces are put together out of the same sources of same categories of budget codes. So they're gonna be pulling it the same way that we pull it out of our own financial statements. The general fund revenues by source, I think it's basically the same as the pie graphs. The blues are the property taxes, and the red is the state aid. So you can see that the property taxes are not rising very much due to the implementing the property tax cap. Showing the same data as a percentage in a bar graph, again, looking at the state aid versus the property taxes. We really only have those two sources of income. This is the actual property taxes, and it's broken up between the star. And the blue is what we collect, the star is what comes through to us as taxes from the state. These are expenditures, and you can see general support, instruction, transportation, employee benefits, debt and interfund transfers. We discuss those together when we discuss it in our pie graphs. But basically, the green and the yellow is the same as what we show in our graphs, employee salaries and benefits.
So question on this one is, not for tonight, but down the road, is that, if you can go back to that one, is this something that Forecast 5 where we can take this and change it to percentage and then say, how's that compared to, 20 other comparable sized districts?
Yes.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, they're going to be almost exactly the same. That's one of the things. The revenue side is where you see the differences. If you are a district that has higher wealth, you're going to have less state aid, more property taxes. So you see the graph differently on the revenue side, but on the expenditure side, it's very similar.
As a percentage.
Yes, as a percentage, correct. And this is our trending from year to year. So you're looking at 2013 up through 18, which is a budget year we're in now, and then 19 and 20 are projections based on numbers that I put into the formulas. So as you can see, we don't change much. It seems like we do a lot and make a lot of changes every year, but it really doesn't change. I always say it's like almost like a cruise ship. It really is hard to move it off its course.
Yeah, because what's the difference between 2013 and 2020 in percentage? Do you know? I went to Central Square, so I can't really figure it out on my own.
It's which one?
Well,
Are you looking
the
at?
point I'm trying to make is that it doesn't seem like there is a big percentage increase from year to year. So
No, there isn't.
2013, 2020, you might have had a 5 or 6% increase,
Right.
which isn't a lot in my business. And what I do, I give 3% every year to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm not seeing that here. I'm seeing a lot less than that. So to me, it shows a lot of.
Yeah, we've made a lot of, state aid has been flat for years. And with the property tax cap, you're looking at, we call it 2%, but whatever that formula comes out to be. So remember, through these years, we've done a lot of work to keep this going. We've got buildings closed. We've reformulated how we've structured the buildings. We've done a lot to keep ourselves moving without a lot of growth.
Yeah, because to me, this is really a success story in that your cost, your dollars, right? You want to get the biggest bang for the money that comes in, and to me, it's applaudable
Yeah,
to be able to
and
run.
obviously it was a force because we're forced to go there because of the revenue shortage.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, with our declining enrollment, that's where we've had the room to implement it and stay on track.
Right. Okay. I just wonder how many more magic tricks we have.
Oh, we got 7 buildings, so we got 7 magic tricks.
That's it.
Kitty.
See, yeah.
This is just another look at the expenditure codes by object, which is more along the lines of the way we have to do it, show it a little bit differently for the budget. When we put it out, you know how we have to do the 3 parts? This is the 3-part look at it. We have to do administration, general, instructional, and other, because the transportation. And again, you can see not a lot of change. This is the salary and benefits as a percentage. And you can see on some of the years in 14 and 15, that's where we were closing some buildings and making some cuts. It's not a lot, but that's where we kind of, I guess you would say, stayed even going through these changes. And this is general fund expenditures by the type. Oh, I'm sorry, the benefits by the type. So the green is the health insurance. So you can see where 2 years ago we made our savings by making the change to the minimum premium and then over to the cooperative. That was a big help at that point too. And this is our actual revenues versus expenditures. And in those years, 13, 14, 15, we were just making it. What we were bringing in, we were spending. Some of them were a little bit backwards. We were losing our fund balance a little bit. I think you've seen those presentations that I've made. Last year and this year are the first 2 times that we've actually made forward gains in our fund balance. And then the other 2, 19 and 20, those are projections, and you see the $1 million there because we always have an appropriated fund balance of $1 million. So when you put your budgets in there, it's going to be a negative $1 million until the actuals are realized. And then this is the corresponding fund balances. See how they kind of were going down, and then now we've made some gains there. And we've realized in those fund balance gains, we've realized our credit rating has changed and it's improved. So that gives us better percentages for our bonding and will help when we totally ban for the projects.
Do you happen to recall in 2014, what was the committed bucket there? That, I don't know what color it actually is, but it's the last.
Back then there was no committed. They totally changed the designations for fund balance. That's what, and I actually took away the slide that has all of them because there's like 20 colors and it doesn't show well.
I can tell you, we
Committed
spent
is
about
new.
5 hours speaking about it one board meeting, I can tell you that for sure. In 2014.
And of course, one of the major pieces that we have to always keep in mind is the declining enrollment.
Is forecast 5 seeing any chance of that declining enrollment changing?
No, they give us, we can run a 5-year projection because obviously there's 5 years worth of birth data up till kindergarten and it's still declining.
The live birth rate.
Yeah.
I think all kidding aside, had we not made some very tough decisions back in the 13, 14, 15, whatever, we would have really been looking at some serious program cuts, and I think that's important to, I know they were tough decisions, and I don't mean to be facetious about it, but we'd have been dealing with a lot more